Hi piano teachers. In this series of videos, I want to give you a look inside Piano for Leisure Series 4 by the AMEB. I was lucky enough to be syllabus consultant for this series of books, and it's my pleasure to actually take you on a little journey through each of them. I'm going to talk about some of the teaching ideas in them, some of the creative ideas, what examiners are going to be looking for, and some practice strategies as well. Now, do keep in mind that my performance today, they're not model performances. So take them with a pinch of salt. Don't necessarily follow every single articulation and dynamic I use. What I would recommend is that if you want a model performance to follow along with your student, then do check out the AMEB recording and handbooks for this series, as they've been recorded by far more talented pianists than me. All right, let's get started. All right, let's get started with preliminary level. So the first piece in the book is called March of the Toreadors. Be very familiar to many of you. For this piece, the only thing I'll just comment on is right at the start, you've got repeated notes. For a student at this age level, and depending on their hand size and their ability, that could be a little bit of a challenge. So I would think about different fingering that you can use. I haven't actually written in what fingers to use on those repeated notes, because a student might quite happily be able to go 2, 2, 2, 2. Other students might be better going 2, 3, 2, 1. So up to you which approach you like to use. And I know some teachers like to change fingers on repeated notes, others aren't so fussed. So up to you what you'd like to do. Piece number 2 is called Saxophone Blues by Melody Boba. So this is a great one. It's a really simple introduction to a kind of 12-bar blues form with just a few trickier note combinations and accents and syncopations as well. So just watch out that you're adding as many of the accents and dynamic changes in there as you possibly can as you learn that with your student. Number 3 is called Bourree, and it goes like this. With a slightly different ending. That wasn't quite right, that was my improvised version. Now, this piece, students are going to look at it and go, oh, that's pretty easy. Left hand, fantastic. The left hand doesn't do anything except one chord position. So I'm going to choose this because it's easy. Well, it's not that easy because there is some syncopation. It's in cut time, which is going to be new for many students. And to make this really come alive, they're going to need to add lots of dynamic changes to it. For the creative practice ideas for this piece, because it's a drone, students could explore their own drone piece. And this is something I love doing with music like this. The left-hand pattern really could open up all sorts of ideas for students with regard to what they could play in their right hand instead of what's written. So let's just take the first 5 notes of a G major scale and let's do a little improvisation with it. So we could do something like this. Students would be able to do that. Perhaps with you playing the left-hand drone, they could accompany you with a simple melody in their right hand, and then perhaps be able to try putting it together while keeping that beat steady in the left hand. And then I would say, well, let's not get stuck on G. What if we move to a different position? So students can have lots and lots of fun using that really simple idea of a drone accompaniment, which of course is really common to instruments like the bagpipes, which have that drone sound. Number 4, I'm really excited to bring you because it's in 5/8, and I wanted to include a number of pieces within with unusual meters. So this is how the piece 3+2 goes by Stephen Dornan, who's an Australian composer. back to the return to the A section. So it's got some simple ideas in it that students can engage with quite easily. One of the things I love doing with this piece, once they've understood how it all goes, is just to shift it modally up or down the piano and have a listen to the different sounds. So it's written starting in A. What if we start in G? Or what about if we go to F? Of course that, we're now using a kind of Lydian scale because we've raised the fourth of the F major scale. So there's some interesting things that you could explore with your student there. You could even, for a student that's going really well, what if they swapped around? Instead of it being 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, what if they went 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and flipped around the groupings of quavers? There's some fun things that you can do anyway with your student. Number 5 is called the Singing Sioux, and this will be familiar to you if you've used the Getting To books from Hal Leonard. It goes a little bit like this. Now, the really important thing in this piece is to make sure you've got all the accents, the staccato, the dynamic shifts, and all of those kind of things in there. And what you'll find, particularly at the end of bar 3, leading into bar 4, we've got an accent on the first note, we've got a staccato, and then we've got a strong accent starting bar 4. So most students will probably the first time do this, and it's a little bit like, no, it's not really that exciting. We want to get that staccato in off here, and we want to land on this note. So one fun little activity that I do with my students is I get ready with my hand under here, and this happens. And they'll jump up, they'll land somewhere wrong because I've obviously got them to try and get used to the fact that we want them to come off the piano and then use their arm weight to give them that accent. We don't want them to have to think about it. We want them to just use their arm. Maybe that was a little bit high, but you get the idea. Fun little activity that helps students understand that the weight of their arm can have a big impact on their ability to play things like accents really, really easily. Number 6 is called Moonlight Variation, and this one will work particularly well if a student has started using the pedal. But all of these pieces in level 1, of course, work without pedal, and that was one of the things that I chose the music by. We need to make sure that pedal isn't required to make it sound good. But I will say that some of these pieces definitely sound better with a bit of pedal. Number 7 is called March of the Cubs, and interestingly enough, when I heard that title at first, I immediately thought of, well, what do you think of? I think of bears, right? Bears, cubs. And so I tell a story when I'm playing this and get my students to as well. It goes like this. So I can see the bears walking around. Maybe they're suddenly in danger and then everything's okay again. Maybe Dad gets home and he's a bit grumpy. And then the cubs are going to sleep. And I've tried to choose pieces like this that really open up the imagination for students. So do have a look at the titles and see if you can engage your student in some kind of imaginative activity around what's that story actually telling. It's going to bring the music to life so much more. Number 8 is called Just Jazzin by Jocelyn Kotchie, Joe Kotchie over in Perth here in Australia. And it goes a little like this. Back to the main theme. Now, it's a great little groovy little tune, but what I love about this is that at bar 9, when we get this descending bass line, and it repeats, I want you to think instantly you could do some improvising with that. So I've suggested in the creative notes for this piece, the first 5 notes of a G minor scale. If you play that left hand, maybe down an octave, get the student to explore some improvising in the right hand using those notes. Something like this. They of course could use a blues scale or any other number of scales, but that's the simplest way to get started with that piece. Number 8 is by Daniel McFarlane, another Australian. It's called Winter's Day. It goes like this. Again, you can play this without the pedal completely successfully, but if a student is able to, I would definitely add it in. Number 10 is called Squareo. It's by Elissa Milne and it's from her Little Peppers books. Many of you will know it. It's a really great activity for helping students with two-note slurs, which is one of the most important things they've got to learn early on, is their ability to phrase and lift and use their arm and their wrist in order to shape the ends of phrases. So what we don't want to hear is this, because it's not a staccato on those second notes, it's just a lift off. So that's something to work on with your student. Number 11 is called Full of Confidence. It's one of my favourite pieces and it's by Christopher Norton. It goes like this. Now, any student will have fun playing that piece. But what's great about it is that the notes in the right hand all come from the C blues scale, and the left hand is mostly a repeating pattern. It's a walking bass. So what this means is that if you have a look at the creative practice ideas for this piece, you can get creative really easily using that C blues scale, and it's written out for you here. And the way I do it is to actually start with just the first 3 notes, and get the students to improvise with that while I play Norton's original left hand. And maybe adding a drum beat always adds a little bit of excitement for students, and they can use those first 3 notes to improvise. When they can do the first 3 notes, then just add a few more notes until you're using the full octave of the C blues scale, and you'll get something like this. Students are instantly sounding like absolute superstars, and it was really easy to do. Just make sure that as you introduce this, you play the left hand while they're improvising. Don't try and get them to do both, because that will end up in a bit of an epic fail, at least at the start. Students will take a while to get the hands together. So do the left hand for them, and as I say, add some beat to it. When they're confident though, if they're going to perform this at a school assembly or a recital night, they could actually perform it as written from the start. Here, they could keep going the left hand and improvise. And then at bar 9, back to the original. Through to the end. It's the coolest way of getting students creative, doing some jazz, using a piece like this as the basis. And the last piece in the book is one that I'm amazed hadn't been used previously in Piano for Leisure. It's Waltzing Matilda, and this is a fantastic arrangement by Steve Hodgson. Etc. So really achievable for students. It's a great one, and I know they're going to enjoy playing it. So I hope you've enjoyed that look into Piano for Leisure Series 4 Preliminary. Stay tuned for the next video.